Well, the Arkansas defense are this season's sack masters so far. They're 20 sacks, 4 more than any other team in the nation, and leading the way, former Alabama transfer Drew Sanders. He's 5.5 sacks, tied for the national lead. Sanders has a chance to take the outright lead this weekend if he can get his hands on his former teammate and reigning Heisman winner, Bryce Young. Sanders, the roommate of Will Anderson. And this week, Anderson spoke of their friendship and how they used to motivate each other as freshmen. Anderson says he's happy for his friend finding success that he deserves at Arkansas. Now, Sanders will need to be at his best, knowing what he saw last year in this game on the sidelines of the Tide as Bryce Young torched the Razorbacks for over 500 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Let's discuss Sanders and other prospects to keep an eye on in this game with our HQ NFL draft aficionado, Ryan Wilson. Ryan, let's start with Sanders and that game against his former team. What are you hoping to see from him, and who do you want to look at on the Bama side of things?
I'm hoping to see from Drew Sanders what I've seen throughout the season. He's a 5-star transfer from Alabama because why most people transfer, lack of playing time, although he played a lot last year because of injuries. But once you see him play, if you haven't, you're going to say to yourself, oh my God, if he had been on the same defense with Will Anderson this season, it would be lights out on a defense that might be one of the best Nick Saban's ever had. He's 6'5", about 232. He played outside at Alabama. He plays everywhere now for Arkansas. Off-ball linebacker. He can line up in the edge. He can line up in the A-gap, and he is just a playmaking highlight reel, consistently play in and play out. The South Carolina game sticks out in particular. He went out there and took care of Spencer Rattler, making play after play. We saw the tackles he was able to make in the highlight package as we see this here. And I think he's going to have a special game against Alabama. He's going to need it for that team to compete. Another fun name to listen to if you're an Arkansas fan, or if you're looking for Arkansas players to watch, Bumper Pool. That's a real name. He's going to get drafted. On the other side of the ball, though, Jeremy, I'm going with Jordan Battle, the safety out of Alabama. He has been there for the duration. He's a senior. He's seen a lot of action, a lot of snaps. We talk a lot about Will Anderson and Dallas up front. I think on the back end, Jordan Battle is a guy to keep an eye on. He thought about coming out last year, decided to return to school. You see the playmaking ability there, mostly patrols center field. He can play a little closer to the line of scrimmage as well, but a traditional free safety in the sense that he can control the middle third there. And again, he's going to have some chances to make some plays against an Arkansas offense that's going to have to push the ball down the field to compete.
Our SEC Game of the Week, Alabama at Arkansas, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Gary Danielson, Brad Nessler, and, of course, our Jenny Dell on the calls for that one. All right, the number one team in the nation, Georgia, goes to Missouri this weekend. So who are you looking at in that one?
You could hold a list of the roster up and say, let's look at that guy on Georgia, and that would be the right call. That team is stacked. We talk about Alabama all the time. Georgia is not messing around. We'll go on the defensive side of the ball. We'll start with Jalen Carter, number 88. And last year's draft, when they had what felt like 20 guys drafted in the first round out of Georgia, Jalen Carter was often mentioned as potentially the best player on that defense. Think about that for a second. He's probably 40 or 50 pounds lighter than Jordan Davis, but he plays just as big. He's quick. He's strong. He's fast. He's been battling an ankle injury. He may see limited snaps, but in the limited snaps he saw in the last game that I watched before he came out with the injury, he was dominating people the handful of times he was on the field. So certainly a name to watch out for there, without a doubt. And let's go to the secondary on this Georgia roster. Kaylee Ringo is built like a prototypical NFL cornerback, 6'2", over 200 pounds. He can run for days, incredibly fluid. The thing is, he might get a little grabby at the top of his routes if he's not on point. That's something you can fix. He's a young player. He's still a third-year sophomore, I believe. He reminds me of Xavier Rhodes, a former first-round pick. So keep an eye on him as well on the outside. He's been locking down receivers so far this season. I don't expect that to change, Jeremy.
Georgia just shy of 4 touchdown favorites in that game, 27 and a hook. All right, Auburn will be looking for their third win in a row over LSU when those two meet at Jordan-Hare. You've got your eye on a couple of offensive players here.
Yeah, I'll start with Tank Bigsby for Auburn. Auburn's had a tough go of it, no doubt about it. He's a special player. This running back class is going to be pretty deep. We may only see one, maybe two would be crazy to sneak into the first round, but typically we see the run on day 2. I expect Bigsby to be in that day 2 conversation. His nickname's Tank, but he's not built like Derrick Henry. You see him there, he's not diminutive. He's about 213 pounds, but the ability in small areas to make guys miss jump out from the start. And he did that frequently last season. It's been a little tougher going this season with that offense. But even against Penn State in a game that they were outmatched, Tank did a lot of things really well. He needs to work on receiving, his receiving part of the game. That's not where it needs to be, but he does everything well as a running back, and it's hard to dispute how good he is. You see him right there running through arm tackles. On the other side of the ball, I'll be looking at wide receiver Kayshon Boutte, one of the best wide receivers in this draft class. The issue, Jeremy, is that he's playing with an offense and a quarterback that hasn't been as consistent as he needs to be. That's probably the nicest way you could put it. And 2020 was his best year. He had 45 receptions, 735 yards, 5 touchdowns when they had those carousel of quarterbacks, those 3 players that played mostly throwing the ball down the field. He has yet to set on fire this year. I think that could change with a little more consistency at the quarterback position, but there's no doubt about it. Whatever happens over the course of this season, Boutte's going to be a first-round talent.
LSU favored by 8 as they travel to face Auburn. All right, number 10, NC State travels to Clemson. The Wolfpack into the AP poll top 10 for the first time in 20 years. But you're looking at a couple of Clemson prospects in this one, Ryan.
Yeah, Devin Leary, the quarterback for NC State, is obviously you got to keep an eye on. But on the other side, the 2 guys responsible for harassing him, we'll start with Brian Breezy, the defensive tackle for Clemson, number 11, coming off an ACL that he suffered about a year ago. And he's not quite exactly where he needs to be athletically, but he's getting there. He is absolutely stout against the run. He moves well laterally. He's got a quick first step. He's not going to be a pass rush threat play in and play out, but he takes up a lot of space, and he's a middle of the line player that can help a defense immediately. We've seen that consistently at Clemson. And then the guy that plays with the 5 technique, the edge rusher, Myles Murphy. Myles Murphy flashes at times, and sometimes he doesn't flash. But here's the thing, Jeremy. He's 20 years old, and he is already 6'5". You see him coming off the edge here against Wake Forest, 6'5", 275. He is only going to get better. And when he flashes, it is hard to ignore. You see the good hand usage here, the ability to bend and get to the quarterback and push him in the pocket, help us to make that sack there. That's what Myles Murphy is good at, and he is going to be a much better player a year from now than he is right now, and he's already at the top in terms of a first-round talent that scouts and GMs and NFL folks in general are keeping their eye on.
Lastly, Ryan, a couple of wide receivers to keep an eye on in the game between Oklahoma and TCU. Who do you have for us?
Yeah, so 2 different body types, 2 guys who are going to be really good at the next. Now, we'll start at Oklahoma with Marvin Mims, 5'11"-ish, 179, and he looks slight of frame when you see him. When he starts moving, he's hard to keep your eyes on. He is electric with the ball in his hands. He is hard to cover off the line of scrimmage. Reminds me a little bit in that Oklahoma uniform of Hollywood Brown, and does a lot of the same things. You see him running away from the defensive back here, no chance. And he does that on a consistent basis. He also adds something as a punt returner, which also makes him more valuable at the next level when NFL teams are looking to draft a player like this. If he were 6'1", 220, he'd probably be a first-round pick. He'll probably be a day 2 guy, but he's certainly helped his stock so far this season. And then for TCU, there's Quentin Johnston, who is enormous. He reminds me a lot of Chase Claypool in terms of the way he plays. The issue is he struggles with consistency sometimes. He'll have some drops that he shouldn't drop, but then you see him make plays like this, tough contested catches over the middle where he just runs through defensive backs trying to tackle him. He's a contested catch guy down the field. He's a high point catch guy down the field. He has the speed you see here in the end around just to take the ball for huge gains, and I think that's his game. The only issue is a little more consistency. He needs to be targeted a little more, too, in that TCU offense. He hasn't seen the ball a lot, but when he has the ball in his hands, he's incredibly tough to stop. And like I mentioned, a Claypool-type player, which is obviously a huge need at the next level when you have those big wide receivers battling those big cornerbacks, someone like, for example, Georgia's Kaylee Ringo.
He is CBS Sports HQ NFL draft expert Ryan Wilson, giving us his players to keep an eye on during Week 5 of the college football season. Great stuff as always, Ryan. And of course, for more from Ryan and Will Brinson, John Breach, and this week at least, Brady Quinn. Be sure to check out the Pick 6 podcast. Latest episode, Will and Brady discuss whether it's time for a quarterback change in New Orleans. They also dive into Brady's car troubles.
Oh, yes.
I thought Ferraris were reliable. Download and follow the Pick 6 podcast wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.